Good morning. I told you I was going to make a video today. Anyway, I got some errands to run this morning. I gotta get some PEX lines, so I need to run to Menards. So to do that, we're gonna make a stop at Rural King because I haven't been there for a long time, and I feel like I'm missing out. We bought that tow to death where we don't go and buy the jugs anymore, so I never go to Rural King, and I'm gonna be right there. So we're gonna go do that. And we've got some wheat to treat this afternoon. We've got a meeting with our crop consultant early this afternoon, to go over our fertilizer plan and recommendations. Maybe we'll get into that a little bit here later today. And we'll see what time we get back and what else we can find to get into, I guess. This is what happens when you end up with the road closed. The road is closed, and you have to find a detour because they don't post one. You end up on roads that look like this. I'm glad I'm not in a combine. I can assure you of that. All right, I am back in the farm. I've been cleaning up the office, which means I cleaned off this circle area and pushed everything back there so that we have a meeting space. But the rest of this is kind of going to sit here. Actually, this stuff here, this was an old thermostat that we had for a dryer that we thought about using down to Berkey and didn't use. I can get this out of here. We'll put it back in the parts bin for the next 25 years until I'm gone and Ryland says, "What the heck is this?" and throws it away. That's a good idea. Anyway, like I said earlier, our crop consultant is coming out today, and we are going to go over our fertilizer recommendations and stuff. So we hire a crop consultant. They take soil samples, and we go over the list, and usually in the late winter, early spring, of what fields we want tested and which ones don't need to be done. We're not testing every acre every year. We are testing everything that's wheat gets sampled as soon as the wheat comes out, and most every soybean field gets sampled. Occasionally, fields that we know are going to wheat next year, we won't do, especially if they had been done super recently. But everything else gets sampled. And the reason we do it that way is because generally we are applying... Sorry, Dad needed something. Anyway, so the reason that we are testing that way is because generally we are applying our fertilizer ahead of our corn crop. Corn and wheat, really, but we don't generally put fertilizer on ahead of beans into our corn stalks. So when we pull those samples in the bean stubble, it's because we're going to apply fertilizer that fall, and we need to know how much we need to put on. So yeah, that's why we're on the sampling rotation that we're on. What we're going to go over today is those numbers. I will show you some of the maps and the reports and stuff that they put together for us once we get this done. But fertilizer is ridiculously expensive right now, and so balancing that, how much do we need to not hurt our yields and sacrifice on the income side of stuff versus not over applying or really even trying to build soil test levels at this point because of the cost of the product. And so we do variable rate. We are zone sampling. A lot of guys will do a grid sample where they'll just take the field, they'll take a map, and they will cut it into grids of whatever size they want. Could be as big as 5 or 10 acres, which is huge. Could be 2.5 acre grids, could be 1 acre grids, could be 1/4 acre grids, which is teeny tiny little spots, and you get lots and lots of samples. We do zone sampling. So our crop consultant looks at our soil type maps, our yield history maps, and they break our fields down into zones with nice, funky, crooked lines. Again, I'll show you these maps once we get them. They're generally bigger zones than the 2.5 acre grids that are somewhat common, but they follow the natural breaks in areas in the fields much, much better. And so we'll pull lots of cores from each of those zones, average them, and then we can apply fertilizer to each of those zones independently so that we're putting on just what we need where we need it, kind of thing. So we'll talk about this, like I said, after the meeting, and they're gone. I have the reports and stuff. I will go through a field or two with you and show you what the plan is there. All right, we just got done with our meeting with our crop consultant. We'll go over some of that data in a little bit, but I have a guy bringing me a wagon load of wheat here at 2 o'clock. It's 2:06, so he should be here any minute. We've got to get that treated, and then we can head back down there and take a look at that stuff. But for the most part, our soil test, everything looks really good. We do have to buy some expensive fertilizer this fall, but we knew that was going to happen. And lime and some of the other stuff that we can have issues with all looks really good. So overall, we're doing a great job. We're keeping up with stuff, but we're pulling some major yields off of some of these fields, and you got to replace that nutrients. There's a lot of nutrients in 75 bushel of soybeans, so you got to put fertilizer back on in one form or another, whether that's commercial fertilizer, potash, MAP, that kind of stuff, or we use the chicken litter like we have been. We have to replace those nutrients. So anyway, we'll get this wheat treated and we'll go down and I'll show you some maps and we'll talk about it some more. Treating wheat. Maybe half the wagon done. This is our fourth box. A little ways to go. We've used about half of our 30-gallon keg up, Vibrance, so we run a fair number of units. I don't know that we'll use it all up. Depends. This guy here just called me this morning. I didn't know he was coming, so if we keep having those, we'll use it up and have to get some more. But it's getting late enough now. Well, most guys haven't started combining yet, so I still might get a fair number of guys that want to bring me wheat to treat, but we don't have a lot more to do with our own stuff because those 2 green wagons over there are already full. I already treated for our stuff going down to Berkey, so we've only got another 80 acres worth of wheat that I need to treat for our own use. And I think I have one more guy that said he was going to bring me some stuff, so yeah, we'll see. It's all right. It's good. All right, we're done treating wheat for today, so let's go over some soil test results. So we get a book, looks like this every year. They switched to black now. They used to be green. Now they're black. Anyway, inside of it is all of the fields, maps, and recommendations for our fertilizer stuff for the year. So let me just show you. We'll go through one or two of them here. So it's organized with a tab for every field, and then in the back we've got some spreadsheets with summaries of all of the zones and how much is getting put on all of them. Let's see, let's pick a field, a good field. Let's see, one where we're actually going to spread fertilizer and we didn't use chicken litter. How about Home Farm 1-3? Okay, so this would be our farm. We're sitting right inside this building, right there, right in that corner. And this is kind of the field that we're working on. This is the low ground in the back where we park our tillage equipment, sort of right in here, field conveyor and stuff. We've got a little pond in here and low ground that we don't farm. There's a waterway that runs along this field and comes along through here and dumps into this pond. So anyway, so this is the field. So you can see our zones and how many acres are in these zones. So we have zone A, B, C, D, E, and F. And these ones are fairly linear like, except for this one here that comes up along the ends, but they're following soil types. You can see how this one here is a lot of this black low ground in here. Probably could split this zone a little bit more based on the color of these maps and stuff, but they're good representations. We try and keep them around 5 to 10 acres. This one here is like 4.6, but anyway, so those are the zones. And so then we'll turn the page and, that was 2 pages. Stuck together, here we go. And here is our soil test results. And you'll notice that they match the zones A, B, C, D, E, and F, okay? I haven't looked at these results, so I don't know what I'm getting into showing you here, but let's look at zone A. So zone A is back here. It's along the trees and end rows. I don't expect this to be the best stuff in this field, but let's look at it. So total exchange capacity, that would be your CEC. Cation exchange capacity is 17.21. That's not bad. So basically what that is how many exchange sites there are to hold nutrients within your soil and stuff. The lower the number, the sandier the soil, the coarser the material is, the higher the number, the finer the texture is, the more clay is in it. So a lot of ours run in that 15 to 20 range. You can see this one here was up to 24 almost. Zone F is 13, one of the lighter ones there, a little bit sandier, just coarser material. So, and then we look at pH in zone A, 6.8. Ideally, we want it to be 6.8. That's perfect. 6.5 to 7. This one's a little bit low. This one's a little bit high, but we aren't going to worry about that. 6.8 on the last one there. So those are pretty good. And then you can see our organic matter percentages here. We range from, there's this 3.45, there's a 2.46 up to 4.83. Organic matter is good. This one here is only 2.31. So we like to have organic matter. Organic matter is something that is very hard to build, but it can be done, just not easily. A lot of cover crop guys can claim to be able to raise organic matter by planting cover crops and stuff, and I'm sure that they can. So, but anyway, so that's what that is. There's a number here for estimated nitrogen release, pounds per acre. Basically, that's derived from how much organic matter you are there, because that organic matter is going to mineralize and break down throughout the year, especially during the summer and the warmer months, and it's going to release some nitrogen. So you can see here where we're at a 2.4, that's only 69 pounds. Where we're at a 4.8, it's up to 98. So you get more nitrogen based on how much organic matter you're talking about. So, and then we start getting into the nutrient levels that are more important here. Soluble sulfur parts per million, they're low, right? They're all pretty low, 8, 14. Sulfur is a leachable nutrient. It's not something you can build up in the soil over time. It's going to run out with the water. And so that's why we have to apply sulfur every year. We're putting sulfur in our dry broadcast. We're putting sulfur in our starter blends, all of that kind of stuff. So, it's helpful, but this doesn't mean a whole lot on the soil test because we aren't counting on it coming from our soil. But now as we move down into phosphorus, so we use a Malic 3 phosphorus test, and it gives us two numbers. It gives us a pounds per acre as P2O5 and a parts per million of phosphorus. And you can use either one of those numbers. The number that correlates the best to what I'm used to is the parts per million of phosphorus. Basically, if this is under 20, we're in trouble. We're in big trouble. We're not too bad here. 35, 44, 38, 58, 55. Now, we have put some chicken litter on this field in the past. I don't remember when the last time we put chicken litter on this field was. I don't think we did last summer. No, it's beans. It was corn stalks last summer. It's probably 2 years ago. So that certainly helps with those numbers there. But those aren't bad. All right. So, okay. Before we go any farther, let me look at something. Okay. So, those soil test levels we then use to make fertilizer recommendations, right? So we're gonna jump back and forth here a little bit between the soil test page and some of the maps that they have provided us with the recommendations on it. So we're talking about phosphorus right now. The way we adjust phosphorus levels is by spreading a product called MAP, or monoammonium phosphate, that is 11% nitrogen, 52% phosphorus, as P2O5, 0% potash. And so when we apply that, it raises our phosphorus levels. That's what we're trying to do here, right? So, all right, let me go back to showing you the paper. Okay, so here's our different levels. We're at 35, 44, 38, 58, 55, and 33. So I would guess in this 55 and 58 zone, we're not putting much on. We're probably putting a little bit in the 44, the 35, 38, and 33 is probably getting more. So we're going to flip to this page. This is the application map. And you can see the three different rates with the three different colors. And I was almost right. So we've got 0 in the reds, 0, 0, 0. Now we have to go back to our first page to match up those zones. So B, D, and E get 0 in the phosphorus. So B was 44, D 58, E 55. We're not adding any phosphorus there. Don't need it. Okay. So zone, that yellow one, zone C had a soil test level of 38. 38 is close to 40. That's not too bad. Must be 40 is kind of our target, I would assume. But we're going to put 80 pounds of MAP on there. Now there's, so yeah, 80 pounds is not a lot. That's a reasonable number. It's not very high, I guess is what I'm saying. And then in zone A and F, where our levels are 33 and 35, we're going to put 90. So just a little bit more there. But overall, pretty low on the amount of MAP that we are adding to that field. But we're trying to bring that phosphorus number up. Make sense? Everybody hanging with me here? Okay. We're going to move on to some more numbers here. And forgive me, I'm not super versed in these and knowing exactly what we're shooting for. But we're going to start talking about numbers in broad pounds per acre or parts per million, and also as a base saturation. So I talked about your cation exchange capacity, your total exchange capacity earlier, and that being the amount of sites or whatever that can hold on to those cations, and different nutrients and stuff can bind to the soil. Well, we start talking about what percentage of those sites are tied up by different nutrients, and calcium is one of them that's going to tie up a lot, right? So, all right, let's go back to the papers here. All right, so calcium. So your pounds per acre is double your parts per million. That's just a standard because there's 2 million pounds of soil in a 6-inch acre or 6-inch deep acre slice, whatever you want to call it, but basically parts per million times 2 gives you your pounds per acre. So we're from, what do we got here? A low of 1,846 parts per million. That was 1875 up to a high of 3910. Okay. So those are our numbers. I don't know if they're high or low, but then we go down here to this base saturation, and you look at the base saturation for calcium. We're at 73.2%, 74, 68, 82, 76, and 70. So this one here is a little bit low. But now, where do you want these numbers? What's the target, right? Well, that's kind of debatable. And this is where different farms are going to differ drastically on kind of what they think. Now, when I was talking about some of this stuff with my dad a few weeks ago, he kind of said, well, 70 to 80, 75 is right where you want it. We're right in the right spot, and maybe we are, and it's worked pretty well. And obviously, we're pulling some pretty good yields off of some of our fields, right? So we're not in bad shape by any means. But I've also talked to or heard some presentations from some high yield guys, soybeans and corn or otherwise, that say you want that base saturation calcium number to be 80 plus, 80 to 85%. So one of those zones was in there. We were at 82. I wonder, that 82 zone is zone D. Okay. So this field, I'll show you again. This field right here specifically is where my corn growers entry was last year, where we had 285 bushel corn right there. Right there. So I was curious if that 82, but that was zone D. That's over here, not in this one. So zone E, our base saturation calcium is 76. Still pretty good. But I have kind of taken the approach that I want to push these numbers. Let's see if we can't get them up to 80 more so, and see what happens to you. I'm not saying on all of our fields because it's expensive to do that, but what happens? What happens if we push these? And so how do you do that? How do you raise calcium levels, right? Well, two things. One, does your pH need adjusted? Clearly, this one here does not, but calcium is a base, right? It's a high pH. So notice where we're at 82, we've got 3,900 parts per million out there. Our pH is high at 7.3. That's not necessarily a good thing to see it that high. So how do we raise calcium percentage without raising this 6.8, where we're at 73% base saturation? How do we raise that without raising the pH up and putting calcium on? Because the way you can get calcium, there's several ways. The easiest and probably cheapest, most common way would be to apply high calcium lime. We use a lot of high calcium lime. Well, I shouldn't say a lot. We use high calcium lime when needed to raise our pHs. That's how we adjust soil pH. If we start getting acidic soils that are in the 5s or low 6s, we'll apply lime. And that raises the pH, and it also adds calcium. That's good, but in this case, we don't want to raise the pH. So what do we do next? Well, another thing that we have done and can do is apply chicken litter. We've done a lot of that. That chicken litter contains an awful lot of calcium. Let me find my spreadsheet. In 1 ton of chicken litter, there is calcium. 66.4 pounds of calcium per ton, and we're putting 2 ton on. So we're putting 130 pounds of calcium on per acre. When we're spreading chicken litter at 2 tons the acre. So that's good. That helps bring up our calcium levels, right? But we're getting a lot of other stuff with that chicken litter as well. All of it good, but it's not super cheap. It's cheaper to apply lime. So another source to raise calcium levels without affecting your pH so much is to apply gypsum. Gypsum is high in calcium and also has sulfur in it. I'm trying to remember what the chemical analysis is. I'd have to look it up. I don't remember. I should. That's horrible that I don't. But it's basically calcium sulfate, I believe. Is that right? All right, I got to look it up. I was right. Gypsum is calcium sulfate, CaSO4. So it's calcium and sulfur, two things that we need. That's the good stuff, and it helps get our base saturation of calcium where we want it, and by doing so, bringing other levels down where I think we kind of need it. So we've used some gypsum in the past, not a lot. I think it's something we probably should look at a little bit more. Now our crop consultant recommendations here don't really say that we need a bunch, but they're not necessarily recommending for the levels that I'm talking about here. And for most of our stuff, it's probably sufficient. But like I said, I want to take a field or two and really push it and see what we can do. So anyway, those are kind of the three sources of calcium that we've got. We do not need pH adjustment on this field, so we have no lime recommendation because it is not called for. We had very, very few areas across our entire farm that had any call for lime or pH adjustment. So you're not actually going to see one of those maps in here, I don't think. But all right, let's go back to our soil test and we'll work our way down. All right, so next we've got magnesium, and our magnesium levels here, 341 or 216 up to 341. 287 on there. I don't know. I couldn't tell you what a good number is basically for any of these, or at least for those two. But when we go down to this magnesium base saturation here, we're anywhere from 11.6 up to, what's that one, 16.5. This one's 18.06. Now, this one here, again, there's a little discrepancy on what's important or what's the right number there, right? Is it 15 to 20, like what we've kind of always thought and talked about? Or is it where I talk to these progressive growers that are saying it needs to be under 10, preferably under 8? I don't know. This zone here is closer to the numbers that we're talking about, except for when it comes to potassium, and we'll get to that one next. But to adjust magnesium, if you need to raise magnesium, here's how you. So we talked about pH adjustments using high cal lime. Well, there's another type of lime called dolomitic lime that's high in magnesium, low calcium, high magnesium. And so instead of adding calcium, you add magnesium, and it raises your mag levels there, and it also adjusts pH as well. So now if you need to reduce your magnesium, how do you do that? Well, surprisingly, or maybe not surprisingly, you add calcium, because as you add when you add calcium to that soil, it flushes the magnesium out. The calcium binds with those exchange sites, and it kicks the magnesium out and flushes the magnesium out of the soil, and then replaces it with a calcium more or less. And so that also, due to the size of those molecules and particles, it affects the ability of that soil to drain, the crustiness of it, the tightness of it, kind of. And higher calcium prevents the soil from being quite so tight and crusty. So if you have super bad soil crusting issues in the spring, and your crops can't come out of the ground because it's crusted so much, you probably need to flush some magnesium out, add some calcium to your soil. That's where gypsum comes into play. So anyway, those are those two, and kind of how they interact with each other. By the way, I'm not an expert on this, so we're going to talk for a long time about soil fertility stuff here that I am not an expert on. I'm trying to learn it, and we're trying to figure it out, and I'm getting better at it. But all right, potassium. Let's move on to potassium. So where are we at with potassium? We've got our zones here. Pounds per acre number 146, 131. There's a 163. I want to say, what's this one? 155. I want to say 150 is kind of our target in here. So we're a little low. Potassium is the one thing. We'll come back to this, look at the base saturations in a second. So we have been working with the crop consultant that we are now for about 4 or 5 years. And the one glaring overall theme that I have found since the very beginning of working with them is our pHs are not bad. Our phosphorus levels are not bad. Our potassium levels are not bad, but they're not where they need to be. And so what we have done, you know, before we were doing this and doing the variable rate, we were just blanket applying fertilizer. We'd put 100 pounds of MAP and 150 pounds of potash or whatever it was, blanket across all the acres that we were spreading fertilizer on, or that were going to be planted corn next year even. And since we've started working with them, we've really backed off on the phosphorus because we haven't needed it, and we've reallocated some of those dollars to the potassium side of stuff because our potassium levels just aren't maintaining where they need to be. And talking to the consultant today, they aggregated, what did he tell me? Over 400,000 soil test results from the last 12 years, I believe it was. And they're trending down over time, which means that we're not keeping up. And the reason I think that we're not keeping up is because we're pulling higher and higher and higher yields off of these fields all the time, right? We're not maintaining with the 40 bushel beans and 120 or 40 bushel corn status quo when these recommendations were made 40 years ago. It doesn't cut it anymore. We can't have that. It's not enough. And so we're pulling off, you know, here, again, let me look something up. All right, so look at this little pop-up window that I'm going to put in here. I'll try screenshot from the Ag PhD grain nutrient removal app. Look at how much potassium a 75 bushel yield goal or yield soybean crop takes, right? So total removal is 165 pounds per acre of K2O potash, right? Now, we're not removing all that because we're putting the stubble back into the soil. We're spreading it behind the combine, right? That 75 pounds that's in the stover is going back, but we're still removing the 90 pounds from the grain portion of that. So if we're going to take 90 pounds of potassium off, of potash off, we have to replace that. And so I feel like, you know, the difference between the 40 bushel yield goal, which when I type that in here, 40 would only remove 48 pounds. So that you can see how much more we're taking off with these higher yielding crops, which is why our levels aren't keeping up. We haven't been replacing it fast enough. All right, so not only do we have that raw number, we also have a base saturation on potassium. And you can see here ours are 1.76 up to 2.48. This one's at 3. And in my mind, those numbers are not high enough. We need more potassium. I would like to see this base saturation number at least 4. And in this zone here, where our calcium and magnesium are kind of where we want them to be, our potassium is not. And so there's the balance act between, well, our parts per million is higher in that zone than anywhere else, but our CEC is so much higher that it's not enough for the base saturation in the sites. And you can see how complex this is and how changing one thing affects another. And it's not easy to get all of these perfect. Perfect doesn't exist in the way that we want it to. So, yeah. So how do we adjust that? Well, we apply potash. Here's the problem, right? Potash is expensive. It's very expensive, especially now. A few years ago, we could buy potash for, I would say, less than $500 a ton. I don't remember exactly, but I think we were in the $350, $400 a ton range not that long ago, 3-4 years ago. And now we're $800-900. It's just outrageous. And so it's really, really expensive to apply enough of this to try and raise these levels, which makes this difficult. But we do apply potash, and we are going to apply potash because we have to. We have to at least put back what we're taking out. And so we have a map for that. So let's take a look at our recommendation and where and how much. So here is that map. And before we get into the rates, this is not straight potash. We are putting on what we call blend 6 here. And blend 6 is 19% ammonium sulfate, 79% potash, and 2% dry boron product. Because we need boron, we need the sulfur from the AMS. The nitrogen helps break down some of the residue that's there, that's in the AMS, and then we're getting 80% of our potash out of that. So, and you can see here we're putting on anywhere from 200 pounds per acre up to 300 pounds per acre. So much more of this blend than on the phosphorus side of stuff. So we go back and look at our soil test results, and you can see like here, where we at, potassium, you know, in that 163 zone, which would be zone D. Which one was D again? D is right here, this long one. So we'll go back to our map. we're putting 300 pounds there. It's the highest number. It's the highest number based on parts per million. Sorry, framing. But it's the lowest on base saturation, which is why we're putting more there, because we need to get this base saturation number up. So that's the recommendation from our crop consultant, and that is what we are going to do. So come back to our soil test and the rest of these. Sodium is not a good thing. We don't want sodium salts in our soil. We want to try and keep those numbers as low as possible. I don't really know what's a good number and what's not, but I do know that on the sodium base saturation, we want it to be half or less, 0.5 or lower. And for the most part there, we're pretty good. This one just got a little bit high, but that one's really good. I'm not too worried about sodium. That's not something we're going to really try and adjust or raise or do anything else with. So we also get some minors. Boron is a leachable nutrient. It's just like sulfur and nitrogen. You're not going to build it in the soil, but you can see we've got just a little bit that's there. Iron, manganese. Sometimes in our high organic matter soils, the manganese is tied up. We have to add that specifically on soybeans foliarly. Copper, zinc. Zinc is critical, especially on the corn. We're adding that to our sulfur. Is something you can build, I believe. Just it's one of those things that it's best to put it in small doses on the starter, right where that corn can get it when it needs it. Aluminum, there's a lot of aluminum in our soil. So those are our soil test results. That's the information that we get and the decisions that we are making based on that. So, and then like this field here, this is the backfield. This is wheat stubble. You can see all the zones again. We get the soil test results, but we do not have any maps of application stuff because we put chicken litter on there, so they don't make recs for that. So then in the back here, we've got this spreadsheet. Here's the field that we were looking at, the home field, total 54 acres, and it gives each zone the rate and then how many tons we need for that zone. So we'll need 7.33 tons of the blend 6, which is the potash plus boron and AMS. And then we'll need just over a ton of MAP, which is also really expensive. And then they don't break out any AMS or potash because it's all in that blend 6. And then this orange one would be if we put litter on, which we did not there. And then they kind of show the zone, the P and the K levels there, plus the exchange capacity, so that you can match those up in the levels and stuff there. So our crop consultant does a great job. If anybody's local and you're looking for somebody, send me an email. I will certainly make that recommendation to you. We've been really happy with them. They do a good job taking the test. They do a good job looking at things and analyzing, and not willing, or they're not afraid to push things where they need to be pushed, but conserve where they need to be conserved. And yeah. Anyway, that's our fertility management side, at least on the fall and the broadcast side of it. Now, as far as application goes, we do not do that. A lot of people do. You'll know a lot of other ag YouTubers that are applying their own stuff, have their own spreaders. We do not. It's a labor availability, a timing thing. When that fertilizer needs to be applied, we are quite busy. Combining beans, hauling beans, planting wheat, doing some chiseling, field or tillage work. And that just adds a layer and a step that we don't have time for. So we hire that done. We just let the local fertilizer supplier where we're buying this stuff from spread it. They do it at a fairly reasonable rate. And they started to be able to get me maps, as applied maps and everything. And I really appreciate that. It shows me that they are covering the ground. They're doing a good job, the rates that they're putting on, and that kind of stuff. So there are other ways to apply this fertilizer other than a broadcast spreader, spinner spreader, strip till, right? So if we get to that point where I can try a strip till bar, I will take those fertilizer recommendations, maybe tweak them a little bit, and band that fertilizer with the strip till bar, put it right underneath where we're going to plant the row of corn so that it's not evenly spread throughout the whole soil profile. It's right there in a concentrated band. I think that would be extremely advantageous, at least for the corn, to put it right where those roots are going to find it, instead of saying, here you go, search this whole soil profile. Here's 2 million pounds an acre. Go find that 50 pounds of phosphorus that's in it. You know, that just seems ridiculous to me. Like, let's put it where the roots can find it, kind of thing. So something I hope to do. Not going to happen this year, I don't think, but I'm hoping to line something up for next year when we've got some wheat down to Berkey, and that'd be a good spot to try it. So, anyway, if you have questions on this fertility side of stuff, I'll do my best to answer them. But like I said, I am far from the expert on this. It is not my specialty. It is something that I'm struggling with, but trying to learn, trying really hard to learn. So there you go. All right. Well, not a whole lot else happening here today. I think tomorrow we might try some corn. We'll look around, see how things are going in the morning. We'll talk to Dad and Phil, see what they think. But even if it's pretty wet, we might go and do some corn tomorrow, get some stuff opened up, start a little bit, see what's going on, how it goes, and then try and get back into the beans by Friday, maybe Thursday. I don't know. We'll have to look around and see if we got any beans ready. So hopefully we'll be a little busier tomorrow. But the weather's supposed to straighten out. There's just been random light little pop-up showers all day today, and it looks like there's one that way right now coming this way. So we haven't really gotten anything out of it, but there's no way you're going to run any beans today, and it's probably could run corn if we wanted to, but I don't want to, not in the rain. So I am going to go home a little early today. I'm going to work in my garage. I bought some more insulation this morning while I was doing my errands and stuff at Menards, so I gotta keep trying to get my garage buttoned up before winter here. That's the idea. So thanks for watching today. Like I said, if you have any questions, comments, feel free to leave them down below, and I will see you guys again tomorrow. Thanks for watching. Hit that like and subscribe button. I think I already said that. Go check out farmfocus.com. Get your Border View Farms merchandise. Oh, I should send them an email. I've been thinking about adding some stuff. New designs, colors, stuff like that. Let me know if there's something specific that you guys would like to see on the merch website. Thanks, guys.